Farrah Mitra, and I want to tell you about some of the toughest feedback I've received in my career. So a few years ago, I moved from San Francisco, California to Houston, Texas to be near a very sick family member. And that meant leaving my in-person role as a VP of people at a tech company in San Francisco. And because I love both giving and getting feedback, I made sure to have these sessions with my teams before I left. And I think, most people might do a session to say, hey, what's something I could stop, start, or continue as I head on to my next job? And I had what I thought personally was a much harder, hairier question on my mind, which is, I wanted to know if I should even do the same role again. In full transparency and vulnerability, I really struggled with leadership, and so I wanted to ask that question. And I am not the type of person who gets nervous. I speak in front of hundreds of people all the time, and I was nervous. I felt like this was such a hard question to ask, and I felt pretty nervous about it. I've given Jill feedback, and now it's time for Jill to give me feedback. And so we walk into the room, and before we could even sit down to do the session, again, palms are pretty sweaty, but before we could even sit down to do the session and start, Jill did this thing that was both really amazing and really unexpected. She was wearing this white hooded sweater, and she reached into her pocket and she handed me this crumpled jewelry pouch. And inside it was a purple necklace. Now, I know you don't know me, but I do love the color purple. And it wasn't just that Jill had given me this token of appreciation. It was also what Jill said next. She said, Farrah, I couldn't be where I am today without your leadership and mentorship, even though we've only worked together a short time. And for someone who was feeling really nervous, that really helped me to relax into the conversation. I was still scared, but I felt more relaxed. So we go to start the session, and I look Jill right in the eye, take a deep breath, and I say, Jill, should I do this role again? Should I be an executive as I move to Houston? And she looked at me for what felt like an absolute eternity, but it was a millisecond. And she said, of course you should, Farrah. You're really good at this. And so my shoulders started to come down a little bit more. I have 2 compliments. And she says, and I really want to tell you something because I think it would be really helpful. It's really obvious how much you care for this team. You are always there for us when we need you. And it's really clear how much you withhold information. And it makes me feel incredibly unsafe. And my heart broke into a million pieces because here I want to empower people with my life, and I have broken baseline psychological safety for a group of people. And she says, and I want to tell you one other thing, and it is going to be really harsh. The other day I was walking down the hall and I ran into a colleague, and that colleague asked me a question. It was a hard question, and I did not want to answer the question. So I skirted it, I danced around it, and I avoided it. And the colleague looked right back and said, come on, don't pull a Farrah. So now I've learned that when you don't give out information or you withhold information, you're pulling a Farrah or being like Farrah. And full vulnerability, I started to cry. I found it really hard to hear what Jill had to say and what she had shared. And Jill did this thing that was absolutely incredible, and I'm so thankful for it. All she did in that moment was she held a really quiet, safe space, and she said, Farrah, I know this is hard for you. And I cannot tell you how helpful it was in that moment for her to hold that space, to have that acknowledgement and have that empathy. And that space, because I'm highly analytical and I like to think things through, gave me just enough processing power, and I was able to think about it. And I said, I think I know what it is. I really want people to be okay. And because I want people to be okay, I withhold information. And now I am realizing it is probably way scarier not to know the thing than to know the thing itself. And you can imagine how much of an impact that had on me for Jill to give me that feedback. And it was hard, and it was hard to hear, but I think there were 2 things that Jill did incredibly well that helped me so that I wasn't crying so much I couldn't think, that I got angry, that I got defensive, that the feedback went completely over my head. Jill did two things well. She cared for me personally. She told me how much my leadership and mentorship had meant to her. And she challenged me directly. She told me the hard thing that over 100 people knew about me. She was brave. She was just 2 years into her career, and she had the courage to tell me the thing that would help me to grow and develop. And that's what Radical Candor is. Radical Candor is at the heart of caring personally and challenging directly.